Hi,
That was Brittany.
and that's Jonathan.
Welcome to Real Time Talk.
Yeah, I guess we don't say that every time.
No, we don't.
All right.
We're terrible hosts.
Okay, so this week we're talking about revival. So, I'm going to ask Jonathan to kind of give us a little explanation of what revival has looked like, at least in his experience.
Boring. No, like revivals are, for me, from my experience, they look pretty much the exact same as an evangelistic series. It's just an evangelistic series targeted at towards the church. So pretty much it's like usually like a week long program where every night uh, there's like a mini church service where they have a speaker who presents, and usually they're very good. It's not saying that they're not good. It's just they're the exact same thing as evangelistic series, and sometimes they don't always target the people you want them to target. So yeah, I find them a little in the depending on who the speaker is. I just find them kind of tedious to go to, but when I'm there, the speaker's usually very good.
I think I've been to one revival series for our church, which I thought was an evangelistic series and worked really well as an evangelistic series. And if it was
Yeah.
supposed to be a revival, well,
I can't remember.
I don't know, but I have been to evangelistic series, and I mean those are meant to reach people who are new to the faith, and revivals are supposed to be for people who have already been in the faith and to bring them back to the faith. So in the lesson from this week, we kind of we talk about Hezekiah and his reign, and um, the lesson kind of gives us a 3-step process for revival. Um, and the first step in here is seeking God's will. So really um actually repenting and wanting deliverance from sin.
And I think that's what most revival series target is just the first step, which is seeking God's will, getting people to realize that they need to seek God. And that's great that you get a lot of people, you get the whole church to, want to seek God's will, but what's the follow up after that? Because sometimes you'll have a revival series, everyone feels pumped at the very end, and then next Sabbath is just right back to the same old church service.
So then the second step is sacrifice. So doing away with the things that are halting your Christian walk. And I think that might be where the revival series are lacking, because there is no follow-up to make sure that the people are not struggling, or if they are struggling, that they have the help that they need to remove the things that are stopping them from finding God again.
Also, like a lot of people when they hear like sacrifice, like you have to sacrifice what's holding you back from Christ, a lot of people think of baptism, of that's the sacrifice, and for people who've already been baptized, they don't think they have to sacrifice anything else, and so that's when a revival series kind of trips up because there's several people who don't believe in getting rebaptized, um, and I understand why, but there has to be something where people can, like, I don't know, visualize or you know uh, physically see um, the fact that they're sacrificing. And I remember one thing that we did in our South school class was I got 12 rocks from home. They're decent sized rocks, and I built a little altar, and I cut out some little paper lambs, and I had all the kids write the one thing that was holding them back from Christ on the lambs. We fold them in half, we put them on the rocks, and then I used a blowtorch and torched them.
Honestly, the kids really enjoyed that. It gave them a visual aspect of,
Yeah.
I'm getting rid of this thing, and it's a commitment to getting rid of that thing stopping you from finding Christ, right?
And it wasn't like I read the papers either. It was a private paper that they had, and that they could actually physically see that it was like they were putting that on the altar to be sacrificed. Something like that is what revivals need. Maybe not bringing a giant torch into the church and start torching a bunch of paper lambs and then catch the church on fire. But you, I think that's what sometimes revivals are missing. That kind of another physical or visual symbol like baptism for people to actually say, I am sacrificing this, because not foot washing doesn't always get people in that mindset.
Yeah, definitely. And then the last step in the lesson was celebration. So to rejoice together in your alive again faith. So the word revival actually comes from the Latin word that means to be alive again. So the last part is celebration, and I think oftentimes revival series will do the first step and then the last step. and they'll completely skip the step of actually getting back to Christ because they're not actually giving up the things that are stopping them from finding him in the first place.
And it's harder. It sometimes can be harder for large churches for to actually organize something where with the sacrifice part. And everyone loves a good celebration, but if you're just celebrating being the same old, you literally have not accomplished anything, especially as a revival, and that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
And I think that the sacrifice part might be a very personal part, but I think that it's very important for the church to have follow-ups because, even for evangelistic series, people get baptized, but then if there's no follow-up after the baptism, after your baptism is the hardest time because that's when the devil fights at you most because you've just decided fully that you're going to give your life to Christ and he will fight you for it. And that's when he'll do it. And at least in my experience, the church doesn't really follow up with you until like 6 months later and they're like, how you doing? Great, cool. They don't stick with you after your baptism.
Yeah, also, what was I gonna say? Uh, yeah, I remember what I was gonna say. It was that a lot of people think that follow up means sending an elder to go and talk to the person. That's not what follow up means. Okay, yes, that works for some people, but what the church is forgetting, that doesn't work for everyone. That may only work for a third of the population because some people, as we know, there's visual, audio, and then there's hands-on people. All right. So if a follow-up is audio, you're actually missing two-thirds of the people. You're literally getting a failing grade. So you need to have a hands-on and a visual um, kind. You need to make sure you're catering to all kinds of people because not everyone wants an elder to show up and call them and say how they're doing and stuff like that.
I mean, personally, I'd be like, why are you calling me? Please
I'd be
don't.
like, I'm sorry, I got better things to do, like plan my next board proposal or something like that. Like I don't have time to sit down and chat with you about how I'm doing.
Honestly, I would prefer like a letter in the mail. That's
Yeah,
something physical that you can get, and it's like, wow, okay, they actually took the time to sit down and think about what they were going to write.
exactly. So like, there are different ways that you can follow up with people, and like, like even now when during the quarantine, you could have them submit like a little video, and like you have to remember that you have to respect people's privacy. So like if they're like, I'm sacrificing, I don't know, an addiction, they'd be like, I'm sacrificing an addiction I had to God. And tell them you don't have to name your addiction unless you don't want to, and have them like send in a video like, I'm still doing strong, keep praying for me, like follow ups like that, and then you could show them the church like this person needs prayer if the person wants it. But there are different things that you can do, and I don't think, well, I know our church isn't doing it, but I think a lot of churches need to reconsider that thing, that they need to reconsider the sacrifice and the follow up.
I mean, actually, I would very much like to receive feedback on what other churches are doing for revival series because I think it'd be really cool and maybe we could help our church with it from ideas that you guys have gone through. But we do have ideas that we wanted to talk about a little bit for how we think, at least in our church, we could make revival series or just revival as a whole um more
Effective.
exactly, more effective, more like actually changing the church and not being a series and changing two people and then
Yeah,
going back to the same old same old.
yeah, because most revivals are pretty much just a feel good, a feel me good kind of a vibe that everyone gets for about 2 3 weeks, and then it's over. For us, what a revival series should be targeting is those who are going to be the next generation leaders of the church, because if you're going to get people to go back to how they used to be when they first met Christ, you're spending too much effort on someone who is not going to be here in the next 20 years, who won't be in a position to, who may not be in a position. I don't want to, like, I know a lot of people who are still like 80 and 90 and healthy, but like, they're not the leaders, the future leaders of the church. Stop spending so much time and money, ministering to them when, listen, kids are leaving the church because they're not getting the attention that they need and that they deserve.
And I think that the church focuses a lot on programs to get kids back to church and not keeping them in the church in the first place.
Hmm.
And the thing is that even in the everyday life outside of church, catering to the next generation leaders is where we need to go because look at politics. At least in Canada, if you have a prime minister that's only catering to the 1% of like super rich people that are really old, I mean, they're going to die eventually. And then the generation that's supposed to be taking over will know nothing about politics. And what are you going to do then? The church will die if there's no young people to take over. So
Yeah.
instead, I mean, I'm not saying to not minister to the old people,
Oh no, no. You need
but
to
the
minister to them.
revival series
It needs to be
should be
targeted.
catered to the next generation leaders.
Yeah, it should always be targeted at them. And like people try to do stuff for the kids, but I feel like they're always going about the wrong way because I don't know why, but like everyone just loves to preach. And like I understand like, you may enjoy preaching, but not everyone likes to hear you preach. Most people don't like to hear you preach. Okay, they want to hear what you're doing for them. They want to see what you're doing for them because as we know, Christ catered for people's physical and mental needs before he ever catered to their spiritual needs. And so I think we're doing it in the reverse. We're trying to cater to people's spiritual needs and then try to cater to their mental and physical needs. And people are just like, I don't care about your spirituality.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole preaching thing, honestly, for youth events, I think it works better if there's a preacher that's actually youth.
Yeah.
Because and I've noticed it, at least at our church, when youth preach, you can see that they are terrified that the words coming out of their mouth is going to offend the older generation. And that sucks because I'm like, people need to speak out because it's going to be their church soon. And if they don't speak up, then they're going to leave and this church is just going to crash and crumble.
Yeah, facts.
And I think that, like you said, like they preach a lot, but what do youth want to do? They want to have fun and also love God at the same time and not relate God to sitting in a pew and talking.
But also, youth want to get out. Like, whenever it's Global Youth Day, or whenever we have an event that we host, which is the Big Give, where we go out in the community and we get like Christian radio to play music and stuff. We offer free haircuts, and it's like a free like giveaway to all those people where they can just shop for whatever they need, and there's food and stuff. Like, that's things that people want to get involved with. That's the follow up that people need
Mm.
after a revival. After you have your revival series, you need a big event. Maybe not a big event, but you need events like that. Not one, but you need events like that to get people to realize, cool, you've said you're revived, you sacrifice, now go out there and do. Because faith without works is dead.
And it's a call to action where you're actually realizing that now your faith is revived and you are needed within your community. Because sometimes you're revived and then you're just like, "Oh, I'm just here to like put more names in your church book." You know, like I know for me, when I started going to church, I was like, what are we doing? I want to go outside and help people. I want to go downtown and give sandwiches to all the homeless people. Like, let's do something that's Christ like and not church like.
Exactly. And so that's what we need to focus the follow up for a revival series on so that people will, after they get revived, after they sacrifice, they'll go to these events and then they'll realize, okay, this is what I need to keep doing, and then encourage them to do that. And that's what elders and deacons and pastors should be following up on. How is your witnessing going? Like, did you enjoy this event? What do you think we could have changed? Or are there any new events that we could do to keep the church in that on fire for Jesus kind of a feeling?
And to also be known within the community. To keep the church known where when people are struggling, they know, oh, I can go to that SDA church down the street because they're there for me once in a while when they have these big events. And they said that I could come to their church whenever. So be that church and give people that opportunity to be that church.
Yeah. I find it's kind of hard for our church to do that because our church is always locked and there's very few people there. And like I understand like everyone has lives, but you can't try to become that church where everyone's going to come to you whenever they need stuff, whenever they need physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual help, and your doors are always locked and there's nobody there. Okay? Like it's it's kind of like you're saying, "Oh, come here, but only from like 11 to 3. If you have problems past 3, yeah, sucks to suck. Like our doors are closed." Yeah, it's you need to make sure that you are available on their time, not your time.
I wonder if, like, you know how they have like youth like suicide helplines and stuff where you can
Mm-hmm.
like text the number and somebody will talk to you. I wonder if like having a phone number on the church door, where if somebody walked up to the church and was like, "Hey, there's a number here," and then you have people that are signed up as volunteers and it like goes to their phone and then you can just like text that person.
That's actually a pretty good idea. We
I
should,
just thought about that right now.
yeah, we should mention that at Pastor. That'd be actually a decent idea because like if people need help, you need to make sure that you are available, like I said, on their time, not your time, because
Hmm.
when they need help, it's on their time. Like if they're struggling with suicide, they're not gonna be like, oh wait, the pastor's not available past 3 o'clock. Don't worry, I'll struggle with suicide tomorrow between 11 and 3. That's not gonna happen. That's not going to happen. So as a church, you need to make sure that if you can be open as early as possible and and close as late as possible. So that way, if you're going to become that church in the community where you just like come to us no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what's happening, we want to help you. You need to make sure that you put in place the things. So like, sorry, we're closed, but we have a helpline. Call
Hmm.
us or leave us a message at the church's main number, and we'll follow back and we'll have a follow up with you within 24 to 48 hours. You know,
Hmm.
but you need to put those things in place so they know that you're there for them.
But you also need to be that church first and have those people that have been revived realize that that's where they're needed. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to teach the people that you're reviving about outreach and about how hard it is to reach the people that have never been to church.
Yeah, it's like uh when when we were first talking and stuff like that, and like you would like call me at like 2 in the morning, and I'm like, I don't even remember how I actually heard this phone call because usually I sleep through everything. And then she called and I picked up the phone. All right, so like you can't expect to minister to someone, to witness to someone on your own time. Like, sorry, I go to bed at 10. Well, if they call you at 3 in the morning, you best be up.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're asking God to help you with your outreach and to help you with your witnessing and your evangelism, you best get in that mindset. If someone calls me to talk, you better be ready to answer the call.
And to be ready to answer whoever's call. Because God
Mm-hmm.
isn't going to send you someone who's comfortable and you're like, oh, I know everything about soccer and this is a professional soccer person. No, okay? He's going to send you someone who is completely out of your comfort zone, someone who you grew up your whole life going like, I could never help someone like that because they're like this and it's just too hard. They're already too far gone.
Yep. Christ never called us to be comfortable Christians. He called us to be uncomfortable Christians.
So I think that that's pretty much it for this episode. I really want to hear you guys' ideas about revival and what you guys do at your church, or just ideas that you have, because honestly, we will use them and get you involved if you if you send us ideas. So you can email us at info.lessonsforyou@gmail.com. Or you can message us on Facebook, where we're called Real Time Talk. We're also on Instagram. I think it's realtime_talk. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And yeah, so you can also message us individually on Facebook if you have us on Facebook.
Yep. Make sure y'all stay safe and wash your hands.
That is not the outro.
I know, but I'm just telling them to wash their hands. Stay in school.
Sabbath school.
Stay in Sabbath school.